Hello, welcome to Do It Yourself with Wayne. Do you have an apple peeler like this that doesn't work well? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to make the adjustments on this thing so that it will peel like it's supposed to and make it a joy to use instead of an aggravation. Now, if you have an apple peeler that looks somewhat like this or just like this, there's a lot of different brand names on the market, but nearly all of them use the same basic design. So, this one is made by Pampered Chef, but don't worry about brand names. If it looks somewhat like this, the adjustments are pretty much the same. You got two, maybe three adjustments. One is this part here. This circle part is the part that cores your apple. This flat spot here, that's the part that peels, that slices your apple. And there's a little screw here. It may be a thumb screw, it may be a hex head bolt like I've got, to adjust this part. Then you got a little thumb screw here to adjust this. This is a cutting blade. This is the one that peels your apple. And you may or may not have a little screw here to adjust how far this arm goes in toward the center of the apple. Now I'm going to start with this. When you move this shaft in, this three-pronged part, the biggest part right here that's mostly round, it's not exactly round on some, although it is on mine. When it goes in here, it needs to be exactly centered inside that hole. If it's not centered, it will hit the edges of this and it will bend it. Things won't cut good if that happens. So make sure this is adjusted so that when this goes all the way over, it centers in that hole. Now your second adjustment is this part here. This is a cutting blade that peels the apple. The adjustment from the factory will probably work well. But if your apple is not peeling good through the middle part of the apple, that's mostly when you want to adjust this. If it's leaving peeling in places, this little blade is back too far. It's back that way too far. Loosen this, move it out just a hair. And when I say a hair, I'm talking about just a little bit. It doesn't take much motion to make a big difference on this thing. If it's cutting too deep into your apple and you feel like you're throwing away a lot of the inside, the good part of the apple, this is out that way too far, so move it back just a little bit. And it needs to be kind of centered over the metal that's underneath it, because that's the metal that's underneath it is a guide, and it needs to be centered. So you don't want it skewed this way or that way. You want it straight and sticking out. Now, you may or may not have the little screw down here. If you do, that little screw will adjust how far this arm moves in toward the center of the apple. And that can adjust how close to the core this will peel your apple at the ends, at both ends. But if you get too close to the core, you're likely to bend this and bind things up. So you don't want to try and peel the apple too close to the core. So that's what that adjustment is for. But like I said, don't try to peel too close to the core, or your apple's going to hit the side of this and may bend things. So anyway, that's your two, maybe three adjustments depending on the peeler that you have. So that's how you make the adjustments on these apple peeler core slicers. And before we move on to showing you how well it works at this point, I'd just like to say we would really appreciate it if you click like on our video, subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends too. Those things really help us grow, which helps us to bring you more videos like this. And also, if you have an apple peeler core slicer like this and you're interested in dehydrating apples, you can see this back here. That's my dehydrator. I've got a video already online showing the whole process of where I take my apples, I peel them, slice them, core them, how I cut them to put them into the dehydrator, how I work my dehydrator to do the thing that it does, and how I store them after they're dried. So if you're interested in that video, I'll put a link in the description for that. So now, let's demonstrate this thing and show how well it works. Now let's try it out and see how it works. When you go to use this, always work from the stem end of your apple into here. So take the stem end there, and look at this end and make sure it's centered as best you can to this hole. Sometimes I'll stick my finger in there if I'm not sure. Just be careful you don't cut your finger. But normally, just visually, push your apple on there like that. But trying as best you can make sure that this end of the apple is centered up at this hole. If it's not centered up, it won't cut good because your blades will start trying to cut into the core and into the seeds, and it just doesn't cut well. But once you got it on there like that, in my case, I just go ahead and move it up a little bit, and then I hold my cutting board, and then we cut it. And there we go. Nice, beautiful, peeled, sliced, and cored apple. Doing great. So there you go. That's how well these things work when they're properly adjusted. If you don't have one and you would like one, I'll put a link in the description where you can purchase your own. And at this point, I'd just like to say thank you for visiting Do It Yourself with Wayne. We hope you have a great day.